Hello, and welcome to our stream. And there's another person here with me. Oh my goodness!
Yay.
Yay! So this is our 2 week, or rather 2 weeks until campaign wrap up live stream, and Steph is going to be co-piloting the stream because I'm bad at talking. But that being said. That's a great way to start. That being said, I am super excited about the upcoming packet for the upcoming alpha of Distal, which is currently in the works, and alongside a bunch of other stuff that's in the works. So let's okie dokie.
I'm trying to figure out how to get the stream from stopping on the website.
The stream
Okay,
from
maybe I
what?
just can't be on there. Never mind. Continue.
Okay, ready, set, go. No,
Yeah.
that was pretty much it.
All right. Cool. Yeah, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you for letting me join. And it's definitely always easier to talk about stuff when you have somebody to talk to. So that is why I am here.
Right.
So you have someone to bounce stuff off of. And definitely if any of the peoples out there in the digital world have any questions or comments, we would love to hear them.
So just for full awareness, Steph has played Distal numerous times, kind of over the iteration of the game, and but you haven't seen anything that's coming up, which I'm super excited about because I always like testing on testing new ideas on folks I know who can like give objective feedback, and because it helps push the game forward.
Yeah, no, we should probably get together soon and have another test play of the game because it's been a little while, especially since doing it in person. And I know you've been making lots of changes, and I'm excited to hear about the stuff you've worked on, even just since the last live stream. You've been, I've caught snippets of some of the things that you're going to talk about today, and it sounds like it's continuing to streamline to make it easy for entry so you can focus on the fun and the playing, which is what it's all about, rather than getting bogged down in getting started.
Absolutely. There's definitely some rough edges that need to be worked out in that early character creation process. The majority of it solid, but when you get to equipment, it's a little rough, especially for like the alpha material is geared toward kind of players who have already have some familiarity with D20 systems, but even then, it can be overwhelming and kind of a grind to pick all of your individual gear. And you can still do that in the latest version, but we're moving it more toward just making it easy to onboard you as for that particular part of the process. So did you want me to go into specifics on different aspects of it, or you just want to kind of?
Yeah, I think you should, because you kind of already, I know that was the first thing that we wanted to talk about, was some of the updates you've made since the last time that there was a live stream. So I think it would be cool. And I'm especially interested in the coins part of it. That looked intriguing. I haven't looked super close. I wanted you to share it with all of us. But it's also in the Distal Digest that we're going to be talking about a little bit later too. So I think that was an interesting upgrade. You can start there, or you can start with equipment. It's up to you. It might be helpful to like. Actually, I don't know which one would be the best one to start with. You're the expert.
Yeah. I'll break it down. So, and just for full awareness, I see some folks in the comments. Thank you for stopping by. Feel free to ask questions kind of throughout this, and or just flail and be excited about the stuff that we create, because that's helpful too, at least to my morale. But
yeah. Oh, and then the one question I've seen so far. Yeah, I'm assuming that's this one. So I'm a martial artist. That is kind of how my entrepreneurial journey started, and it was through martial arts friends that I actually got introduced to Dungeons and Dragons as well, which is where my TTRPG journey started. So yeah, it's a karate trophy.
Word. Novi says excited for AO6, and Impervy, hey, how's it going? All right, so yeah, so one of the new, so there's a lot of changes happening in Alpha 6. First of which is that it's much prettier. It's been beautified a whole lot, and I think it helps kind of tighten everything up too. You know, the formatting has gotten a lot of pruning, and that's the stuff that. So since I'm a designer, I get excited about things that maybe aren't like immediately obvious, or kind of just like, even formatting stuff is super fun for me.
I think that's also really important to gameplay though too. There's definitely, I've had this conversation with people before about the 5e player's handbook. There's sections like there's the part about backgrounds where you're really supposed to make your own background even though they have like 20 pre-made ones there for you. The part that tells you about how to customize it is like split between 2 pages and just buried in text. Formatting is hugely important. Design is hugely important to being able to understand, to enter in, and to be able to easily navigate while you're playing. Like I like the Pathfinder handbook structure, the core rulebook structure, better than the D&D structure. I don't remember if you ended up doing it, but I'm still advocating for the little side tab, the bleed tabs on the edges for the printed book, because that always helps you navigate through when you can see where you're at. Just there's so much information, the better it's organized. Yeah, exactly. Novi. Visual flow helps with clarity. Yeah.
So the jury's still out on whether or not that's going to happen with the hardcover, but there's already a lot going on with the hardcover. But given just like the two different sides of information and kind of splitting things up, so we'll see how that goes out as we like tinker with the layout and that sort of thing. But Alpha 6, when it comes to the packet, which is all single page, one of the first changes that you'll see is that equipment, since that was one of the major slowdowns, is now easier to obtain. So when you get to that section, there's a part that says like, hey, roll on this table, and then it just gives you equipment. So it checks if you have at least one strength or one dexterity or one intelligence, and then you can roll on the table. You can always create your own like packet of equipment, but it gives you everything that you need basically, and that feels kind of thematic. They have like individual little loadouts. It's a D6. You can get one of 6 starter packages, and in doing that though, needed to go back through and change all of the a lot of the backgrounds that were like giving you equipment, because you'd find you pick a background option and it'd say like, oh, you get one low priced item or one medium priced item. So all that's gone. It's been moved a little bit further up to the actual equipment selection stage, and then and there's some new stuff coming in too that I'm still kind of working through. But you used to be able to get gold from certain background options as well. That's gone. So thank you, Crabsoft. I need to not pay attention to chat because stuff like this happens. But you, so as you're going through the different background options, you see you no longer see gold. Instead, it's been replaced with something that's called a fortune. And a fortune kind of just indicates any accumulation of inherited or earned wealth. Like it could be an estate, like you have a manor somewhere in the region, and maybe it's in disrepair, or maybe you just have a hoard of gold coins sitting in a vault somewhere that you can't access. So it's very similar to contacts and curios. It'll be something that is kind of part of your background story that you can kind of work with the GM and figure out exactly how useful that'll be. And that kind of removes the finite benefits that you had. So since you got gold coins from background options, you'd spend gold coins and then then you're essentially getting nothing from some of those backgrounds. So anyway, those are some of the rough edges that are kind of been smoothed out in the background and equipment section. And then the way that we handle weight in the game, so encumbrance and that sort of thing, which hardly anybody likes to deal with ever, has been totally redone. It's way more simple now, even to the point of like yesterday, I went through and tried to pare it down again to make it even more simple than it currently, or than my latest iteration was. And you'll see some of those changes and be able to give me feedback and that sort of thing. And I think the last one is so that the coins that you keyed in on before stuff.
Yeah, can we see the equipment thing real quick? Do you have the ability to kind of share a little bit a screen of what you've been talking about?
It'll take some doing. It would take some doing. Yeah. So we're gonna try to keep this live stream a little bit snappy too.
Okay.
Keep it about an hour. So if there's time at the end, maybe we'll circle back around and show you some of the actual layout stuff. But
yeah, and then basically, if you want to be crunchy, you can be crunchy, and if you want to just get to playing, you can just get to playing, and you don't have to get stuck in the weeds.
Yeah, there's currently starter kits that kind of help with that, but they look super ugly, and it's kind of like an afterthought. So it's just been integrated into the system now, and it feels much better. But when it comes to coins, so we are not a game that focuses on simulation a whole lot, and what that means is that I don't care how many miles a horse can travel in a day. You know, you don't need specifically 6 hours of sleep. You know, 2 of which spent doing whatever. Even the amount of arrows we don't track individually. It's like it's a die that is an abstract of how much ammunition you have left. So we track a lot of things in abstracts in that way. Coins are going to be, so we're taking the concept of gold and kind of moving it toward a more abstract perspective where you have like 5 coins that or like up to 5 coins before it starts going into your inventory that you spend on things. And like 2 coins would be the cost of a dagger or a short sword or something like that. So it doesn't have this like kind of fiddly numbers anymore. It's more like tiers that you're spending. So like 2 coins is like a small weapon. 5 coins is like a more elegant or expensive weapon. Like 1 coin is what you spend to spend a day in the inn, you know. But some of these things will be kind of enumerated in not just the packet, but also the digest that we'll show off later too.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it sounds really cool. So what's left to work on before the release date?
For the release of the packet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the alpha. So there's still a lot of loose concepts that need to get refined. So that needs to happen. And just for full awareness, I'm aiming for the release of packet 6 on the 27th. It might be a little bit later than that, but that's toward the end of the campaign. So we'll drop it. That's free for everybody, just like all of the alpha material before, and all of the quick start and the beginner's adventure that currently exist will all be refactored so that you can so that the rules make sense for all those things as well. Yeah, there's a bunch of new, the character sheets got revised as well, and that still needs a little bit more tuning. And one of the things, okay, I'm just talking about like random things that I did at this point, but like all the language in the document has been refined as well, especially when it comes to like distances of things. Like I've added an abstract measurement of distance alongside the hard measurement. So if you're the type of table who often finds themselves playing with theater of the mind, so like this enemy is near you, or in the vicinity and that sort of thing, you will have terms now to help describe the actual hard ranges in the game, which I haven't seen another game do. Usually they stick to like, okay, it's abstract ranges or it's hard ranges. I haven't seen the combination. I'm sure it exists somewhere, but but it's going to be a fun concept to explore. Yeah.
Cool.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a lot of words.
It was. And it was a lot of like the nitty gritty stuff, which is definitely, when you're the one, especially solo, creating the game, you can get really immersed in all of those little details. But what are you hype about? As Crabsoft said, what are you most excited about with the how it's evolving and how it's moving forward?
So I think every step that we take gets us nearer to what the system was designed to be, which is to say, uh, figuring out which elements, I guess, how to make a cohesive game where you don't have like loose elements that don't quite fit. Everything needs to feel, yeah, I guess cohesive is just the word. That's what gets me excited the most. Um, I I like the doing, the creating and the designing and just making things better. So when I can eliminate 78 uses of the term within and just shorten it down to with, that's what gets me excited as well. But then there's new stuff too. If you like shiny toys, there's some new weapons that have been made their way into the document, and there's some updates to specializations, uh, and I think that's the majority of it though. When it comes down to it, is the refining of the document and making it a game that is easy to pick up, easy to see the like what it's intended to be, and if that jives with the style of play that you prefer, hopefully something that you can latch onto. So that's Alpha 6.
Yeah, no, and I think the thing I'm most excited about with the whole game in general, which is what all of this in the weeds stuff is working to refine, is the fact that the way that you've designed the game is focused on bringing like putting the focal point on the social element rather than how many miles you traveled or how many feet you are away from the XYZ, all of the the nitty gritty stuff, so you can just get in to the playing. And you actually had a cool little article or post whatever on a backer kit that you put out recently just about the the social side of it and how it was designed with the social element in mind. So I was curious, what are the biggest challenges that you see in like across the TTRPG space with how games get bogged down and or distract the mechanics, distract from the social side of things. So what are the challenges that you're trying to solve, basically?
Yeah. So like you were saying, there's kind of like a social. So I like to call it a social layer that sits on top of the actual mechanics. Also, hello, Koki. Um, the so designing a tabletop role playing game is very different from designing a video game, and the the part that stands out to me the most is that when you're designing a tabletop role playing game, everybody at your table is hopefully volunteering to play. They're investing their time to create relationships with the people at the table. If you create a game that is too adversarial, then you'll end up potentially pushing real life people at your table either away from the table or might even sever those relationships. So making sure that everybody is kind of on board with the game that they are trying to play is a big part of what you need to consider when you're designing. So designing for the social layer, we do that in a number of different ways for Distal backgrounds in particular. Just as an example, in order to make a background effective, let me back up. So backgrounds are 2 sentences with 4 prompts. And these prompts you roll on the table, and you'll end up getting some mechanical benefits as well as narrative hooks And even just the 2 sentences that you've created are enough to say, this is my character. This is what, I don't know, it gives you enough to role play a character, at least in some respect. So if you've ever had a GM at the table ask you for a background or for like your backstory, okay, if you've ever GM'd a table, you'll know that some players care more about that than others. Some people really just they want to give you all their backstory because they care strongly about the character right from the start. But others are just like they kind of like might make it up on the fly, or they might have a few sentences, or like they might have to work with you saying this is what I'm thinking. The background system kind of takes all of those disparate human elements and bridges them together. So by systemizing it, by going through the process and saying, this is one thing that you need to do to create a character, it takes the burden off of the player so that they don't need to think too hard about the backstory. They can still come up with all sorts of stuff, and there's still plenty of room for creative expansion. But bare minimum, everybody always gets what they want because it's right there in front of you. So considering how humans behave are one of the things that you do when designing the game. That's what I consider like that social layer. So backgrounds are a good way to do that. The organization that you build at session 0. So organizations are very similar to backgrounds in that you create them as a prompt, except everybody at the table is creating one thing. So your characters already know each other. You're figuring out their place in the world, and you're doing this by talking to one another, choosing the prompts that best represent the themes of the game and kind of what you want to play, and that gives the GM ideas for like what sorts of experiences they would give to you. So those are a few of the things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the big thing that all points to is it inspires communication right out of the gate. So it inspires a conversation so that you're interacting with your DM, and it kind of gives a foundation like banks to the river to start everybody like close to the same page, because I'm sure anyone that's played any like TTRPGs has been in that experience where you've got two people that are like have totally different ideas of what the gameplay should be like, or how information should be communicated, or what information should be communicated. So I think it just creates like this little foundation, this little bit of a rooting that you can come back to, so that everybody has the same certain little elements, again, without it being restrictive. If all y'all that saw the last live stream where we did some character creation, you saw how it like created a conversation, and what I rolled up, it got me thinking in one direction, and Rel had a totally different idea, and we were able to talk about it. And then it just comes down to the basic respect of, as the GM, he's not going to try to force me to go with his idea, but it did get us talking about it, so it helped us share and interact right out of the gate. And then the other part is inspiring collaboration through the organization part of it, which is another like background element. So I don't know if you want to talk about that piece, because I'm not sure that we did that much on the last stream, but that's the part that really is going to bring everybody together and talking.
So I did actually go through all that. You were sifting for, I'm assuming, a character sheet.
Oh, you did? Okay. The organization part?
I run through
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, but, no, I saw Crabsoft asked what characters that I played, so I was pulling out all of my many variations of the character sheet. But yeah, no, the organization part of it, again, it inspires communication, because when in any relationship, whether it's at the table or it's your marriage or with your kids or with a friend, or just watching, watch any sitcom. Where does the plot come from? Usually a lack of communication, something that could be solved with literally one sentence if people just had the trust and kind of the pre-framing from the start that you could talk to each other. So I think that the setup helps inspire that communication, and the design then puts that 99% of Buffy episodes are solved with a cell phone. Yeah, and even nowadays, that you still see the same thing. I've been watching that there's a new show on iTunes. It's not important, but it's just interesting how much could be solved with better communication, and that's what this setup inspires.
Absolutely. I wanted to pause for a quick moment because I've got a question here from Fajita Doctor. Either just in case the project doesn't fund, will you continue to develop Distal? I'd be interested in buying it even if the crowdfunding doesn't succeed. First off, thank you. That is super cool. How it will work, frankly, I don't know, because part of the backing of, or the funding of Distal, the attempted funding of Distal, is to figure out how many people want it. B, give me, well, before this, it was like, okay, can I actually pay to live, and so that I can work on this game, through the rest of the year, which is not going to be the case, unless some sort of miracle happens and money rains out of the sky. Probably not, and which means that I'm very much going to need to go back into the job market and find something full time just to support my living. If that says, okay, all right, I need to take a break to adjust the Twitch stream category because Huge Milky's over here wants me to get off. The Twitch is streaming under the Overwatch category instead of the wrong one. But I'll do that after I answer this. But yeah, so the alpha packet's going to be free prior to the campaign ending. So even if we don't fund, there will be that's a game that you can at least play with folks at your table. I think there's an argument to be made how much value that would actually have, because switching to any system is a little bit of a commitment to do. But I frankly don't know if I'm going to be able to bring the product all the way to fruition. It might complete at the very least without art, but honestly, that's going to depend on my next job. I have this. It's not a bad habit. I'm very satisfied with it, but I commit really, really hard when I have a job, and I'm devote myself wholly to it, and that becomes my, hopefully, it becomes my obsession, depending on if that job is fun to work at or not. So we'll see, is the only answer that I can give. But if you haven't funded the project, for anybody who's currently in the chat, go to the backer kit if you're not there already, and throw down a pledge, because there's no risk for doing that. It makes it so you can, so you obviously help fund the project, but if the project doesn't fund, none of your money gets taken, which is a cool thing about backer kit. Kickstarter will do partial funding stuff, and that's burned a lot of people in the past. So I think backer kit just doesn't work. I'm not going to deal with it. So hopefully that answers that question. And let me try to pop on over real quick to Twitch and try to change my category. But if you wanted to tee up another topic stuff, please feel free to do that.
Yeah, or while you're doing that, since it's going to pull your concentration, I can answer the question about what characters I've played. So anyone that watched the stream last time will probably remember that Ferryman is the one that I have been drawn to the most. So that's the one that it has gets more powerful the more times they've died. Basically, the more Deathmarks they have, there's an increase. And that was an interesting topic. I don't know if we'll get to it this time or maybe on the next live stream, just about the role of consequence in Distal. But because that's something that I'm starting to get more hype about with the Distal system, because I always find in D&D, I just fall into the habit of wanting to be the best and min-max everything and not have any negative consequence. So I do everything I can to only get the pluses. And Distal creates this interesting idea of trade-off where there's times where you're kind of gambling. You give something up to get something. So with the ferryman, that comes in the form of Deathmarks. You get more the more death happens. So my first character that I'm still in love with was Anyi, and obviously the ferryman's evolved, but a lot of the core stuff is still there. But I basically ended up making her like a death doula. So she was a Yvain ferryman, and she had died on her own plane and somehow ended up on in the distal plane. And yeah, and then she gets pulled towards wherever there's more death, because ferrymen also get their spell slots from things dying around them. So that created an interesting Pavlovian response. We had been playing every single week, playtesting this, and then I went and played D&D, and something died, and I was like, ooh, I was so excited, and then I realized it meant nothing. But yeah, so the ferryman is definitely my favorite. Embergut is one that got me thinking about the consequence thing, but your little article recently, 9 days ago on BackerKit, talking about the Embergut kind of made me interested in that one. That's another one that has trade-offs where you can, for a price, you can increase your spell slots. So yeah, there's lots of Overwatch stuff in the chat.
Yeah. So, all right. So if anybody's here from Overwatch, I don't think you're getting any drops. I did change the category over to tabletop role playing games. So if you refresh the page, it'll show up what hero. Please, Koki, you guys are killing it.
Yeah, so those are the ones that I played the most. I did enjoy Berserker. I like smashing things. That's kind of been my style in Dungeons and Dragons. Also in the sparring ring, someone asked about the trophy earlier. I tend to go for the Hulk smash method. So Berserker was a fun one too, and then the others I've dabbled in. I really want to play. Oh no, I have too many pages. What was the plant one?
That is not in the alpha packet.
Not in the alpha packet, but that one was
it is.
Cool.
It is the dryad.
The dryad, yeah.
Yes, and it needs refinement.
Of course it was. Is it gonna come back at some point, or is that one that's kind of?
There was just so much going on.
It was interesting. It was complex though, because the dryad had, at least the one that I picked, the Grove Blossom Dryad, had all these, it could create little plants, and then the plants could evolve into things. There's definitely a lot going on, but it was super interesting.
So I like the idea. So just to speak on the Dryad real quick, because if you're not playing at my home table, this is what you missed. The Dryad is a class. It's not a race, lineage, whatever. And the lore in the world is, well, I can get to that later. You actually see some of it in the adventure in the quick start, which has some stuff about dryads. But if you're playing one, you plant little shrubs. I forget what they're called, grove plants, and you plant it underneath you, and then at later levels you can kind of plant them elsewhere. But then those blossom into different things. So you can turn them into thorny barbs, or you can turn them into an explosion of healing. But the micromanagement of dropping the plants and then setting them off as traps was inelegant. So I like the idea overall, but it's got to be way streamlined, and I just think it could be done smarter. So it is super cool though, and you can one of the things that you can the signatures that you could take was you basically become a shambling mound sort of situation, which is if you know in Dungeons and Dragons there's a monster called a shambling mound, and it can be kind of scary. But anywho, so let's see. What else we got? So
Yeah, well,
Barth.
that actually leads into some of the questions that we had too. Although, do you have stuff in the chat you want to address first?
Sure. So let's grab this one from Bradley Barth real quick. So what is your favorite change of version 6? What is your least favorite change? So my favorite change would probably be probably the visuals, but feel like that's cheating. Just the formatting got a lot of revisions. I really like that I like what I'm doing with the equipment selection now. And I also like what I'm doing with the weight balance because it just pares down on the inventory management. I think my least so a change that I'm excited about, but also apprehensive about, I don't want to say least favorite, is the way that I've restructured all the verbiage on all of the spells and all of the abilities to use they use abstract ranges alongside hard ranges. This has been to me it's been beneficial in a lot of cases, but there's some situations where the language just feels a little weird, and that bothers me personally. So I'm gonna keep going through and like streamlining things, but there's a lot of interesting changes that I'm really interested in the feedback on because I don't see a lot of games do things the way that I'm trying to do them, and it could be for a good reason. But I haven't touched that stove yet, so I don't know if the stove is indeed hot, and there's a reason why, or if it's just maybe I'm just innovating on stuff that existed, or like ideas that just haven't kind of come to fruition with other games. So we'll see.
Cool. Yeah. So you did have a couple of questions that got posted in BackerKit before diving into the stream. Which you can engage in the community in BackerKit, and then it gives you little medals and stuff if you're super supportive. But the first question was from Dark King X. And what motivated you to choose your current systems for casting classes? And do you feel that any classes are missing? So I feel like that like goes right into the Dryad thing, because that's a caster class that isn't there. I don't know if
Right.
you feel like it's missing, but it
Well,
makes a good bridge.
yeah. So I think that kind of so that the question is two parts. There are different systems like archetypes for the casting that occurs between the different classes. For example, the Ember Gut uses bargain spell casting. The Ferryman uses harvest spell casting, and that just means that they get their spell slots differently. Oh, spell slots are being changed to they're going to be called invocations. Uh, we'll see. We'll see how it works. I don't know,
Is
but
there a specific reason for that, or?
it feels like a little bit more. So when you invoke something, you're drawing power from somewhere,
Mm.
and the term spell slots is the way that I'm using spell slots isn't actually what that means. Like D&D, you have like, oh, it's a third level spell slot, a fifth level spell slot. So it's kind of more generic. I could just as easily call things mana or some other familiar term. But I liked the term invocation.
I don't know how many people
Because
will go there, but it's a little more immersive story-wise. Like, spell
Mhm.
slot is a very mechanical term.
Right.
So it's like what you have little slots inside of you, or I don't know, so it does. uh, so it does with invocation and that idea of invoking a power, because they do all seem to come from some external source, but more
Right.
specifically and interestingly than the generic D&D, like innate versus uh whatever
Right.
the word for warlock is. Why can't I think of
Yeah.
it? A patron, that kind of thing.
Right. Pact magic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's a few different things there, but the way that we're doing spell casting archetypes. So you're talking about the ferryman. they're using harvest spellcasting, which means that they don't get spell slots to start with. They gain them over time by, in the ferryman's case, through the death of nearby creatures. The Ember Gut, which uses bargain spellcasting, would gain its magic through sacrificing attributes. So you have strength, fortitude, dexterity, blah 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 blah. You can make a bargain with the person or the being that you are pacted with, and you can kind of like, you can take a penalty. You crush all of your stats for one particular attribute. So it's like, if you have some strength but don't need strength, you can like sacrifice that. And how I envision it is that for the Ember Gut in particular, fire is a big theme. I imagine your arm kind of just like charring in the veins, becoming molten, and you losing like physical strength because this creature, this entity beyond, has like drawn that energy out in a more, I guess, like kind of like a really visceral way, and they're using it for whatever goes on in the plane of fire. Just that sort of eternal like struggle between the different empires and that sort of thing. Anyway, but functionally, what you get is some spell slots, invocations, based on how high your attribute was. So, and you can do this in combat, but you can only do it once every 24 hours. So the goal is, if I'm in combat, I've used my normal spell slots, so those are all gone, and I've no magic left. The situation is dire. What should I do, or what can I do to alter the circumstances? So I can take my intelligence and speak to whatever being, and I just give up a part of myself, and then you get some magic back, and that can hopefully help you turn the fight. So it's that give and take. It's a give and take from you touched on it before, just the consequences of your actions. So that's what the bargain spellcasting does. And then there's one that's more vanilla. It's called devotion. It's basically just like the study and practice and commitment to learning magic. So oracles have that, magisters have that, and you just gain spell slots over time, or rather more invocations in this case. Yeah, so that's the spellcasting archetypes. The spellcasting classes, Dryad, I think, touches on the druid-like, that gap there in what we could create, but also we could do all sorts of stuff. This game in particular is meant to create specific like class fantasies through like themes and how they would like move through the world. And quite frankly, that could be anything. We don't need to replicate all of the, like a sorcerer and a wizard and whatever. We have some stuff that's like adjacent to that, but there could be a bunch of stuff that's kind of like in that same space. It's just imagination is the limit.
So do you feel like any are missing from the current slate of classes?
I definitely want the something earthy. So Dryad might end up going that direction. There's also it's not explicitly a spellcaster, but it has some spellcasting capabilities. It's a class that we kind of worked on a live stream quite a while ago, called a Mist Runner or a Mist Walker, which are meant to be sort of like, they've been kind of pacted to, there's like treaties with old water elementals and the people of the Distal that like would protect the secret passageways between different realms and stuff. But nowadays it's just like, some people have the ability to draw humidity or moisture out of the air and create mist, and those people are also very scary. So that would be ascendant, like your ancestors entered these treaties and it meant something, but over time, who knows what that has actually become in kind of the modern day. So that's the concept being worked from. Whether or not that makes it into the game, we'll see. But it's kind of meant to be like a hit and run sort of ambushy class with also some hybrid spellcasting capabilities.
So are there any that you feel that you have currently that you feel are like super unique that don't have like a matching counterpart in D&D or Pathfinder?
Yeah, I don't think that there are. I think that the tropes have kind of been tread upon for more than 50 years or at this point. So I think that the easiest way to approach it is almost from the mechanics side, where okay, you can have something that feels or that you would identify as a warlock, but the way they operate is very different. So just the bargain spell casting with the Ember Gut, or something like the Oracle, which can feel very like divine, soothsayer, almost witchy at the same time, but they deal with like actual threads of fate. I mean, okay, maybe that one is unique enough to call out, but even then, I feel like we're taking like identities from like Pathfinder has an Oracle. I actually don't know how that operates, but I imagine they're at the very least following similar themes. So
yeah, I don't remember. I haven't done too much Pathfinder. And then I was also curious, just as you were talking, do you think is there a cap on classes, like how many you can have before it gets super unwieldy, or does the way this is set up create space to, or I don't know if they'd be like subclasses or branch classes, like
right.
you've got the Ember Gut thing is like all fire, so, and then you were talking about the Mist one sounded really watery, so it's like, could you have kind of versions where the template is similar so that you're not like, mechanically it can be understood, because one of the problems is if you have 25 different classes, now the DM has to be somewhat, or the GM has to be somewhat familiar with all of those to make sure that the play happens, and you don't want it to be too overwhelming for people. But if you have it where it's like, all right, here's this kind of more wizard like template, or and then but then there's like different iterations of it so that the format is predictable, so it's easier to absorb just the difference. So do you think there's a cap on the number of classes you can have?
So I think that yes would be the short answer. I don't think we're there. I think there's actually a lot of room to expand things out. At the same time, it is something that you need to be very careful with. So one of the things that Dungeons and Dragons does well by virtue of templatizing everything is that you, uh, like if somebody is playing a rogue, you know that they're playing a rogue, meaning that there are certain abilities that they have access to. Sneak attack being the primary example. At the same time, the subclasses diverge wildly. I think it's the thing that you need to design around is that the player needs to know, or the player should know what their class does. They don't necessarily need to know what all the other classes are. And also, I would argue, neither does the GM. That's something that they can kind of like learn over time, but the rest of the game has to play nicely too. So if you have an ability that's just like way out of left field, then the GM's going to say, "Wait, what? Why can you do that?" And then and go through an explanation and this and this. And I think that by keeping kind of the mechanics the base mechanics of the game really tight, you avoid a lot of those situations. But yeah, I think it's probably more of a sliding scale. I don't know if there's like a hard number where you would cap out on. I would also say that there's a lot of ability to create variance within each class by virtue of the class signatures that they have access to. And so even the Oracle, just as an example, can learn some more like primordial feeling abilities, which can bring them kind of like into the realm of almost druid like, just through one of their signatures, or maybe shaman like, that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know if I have a great answer to that, but I don't think we're
So
there
you're
yet.
at 11 from what I'm seeing, you're at 11 classes now. Is that going to stay the same for Alpha Packet 6?
Yes, and no new classes being added until we can say that we're going to finish the game. So,
yeah. And you don't have to list them, but do you have any others other than the Dryad that are kind of like got tabled and you might return to?
yeah. So the Dervish, I was really excited for. It's it's like an assassin style class that can also be kind of skirmishery, and it manipulates dancing blades. So they whirl around and cut people, and the damage is like inescapable, which is like their big thing. Where if you're close enough to the target, you're going to deal at least a little bit of damage because that blender is going to nick you. So it was a really cool class. I think it actually plays really well, but I was also thinking that like when you start going that direction, it gets into lore that is on like this part of the world, and I would kind of want to flesh everything out more there before bringing that into the main game. So it
Yeah,
seems
because
like expansion territory almost.
yeah. So you don't really have your classes aren't generic. It's all about being tied back to the story and the
Right.
setting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So we ready for the next question?
Yeah. Hey, oh, hi, Koki. Henry. Sorry, I said hi to Koki before. Henry is saying that he likes how the lore is tied so tightly to the classes. I think there's a lot of room to bring more of that in too. It's the balance is just like how do you make it specific without being hyper specific, and hopefully I'll be able to figure out where that line is as we flesh out more lore of the game.
Cool. So Bar Trek 331 had asked before the live stream what your favorite classes to play and why. So I have already professed my love of the ferryman class, so I won't do it again. But what's your favorite so far?
Man, I've spent more time as a GM than I have as a player, so I haven't got a lot of chances to play a lot of the different classes, at least past like the first couple of levels. The players have been doing that for me. Let's see, what is my favorite? I think that one of my favorite. Well, okay, so it's cheating. One of my favorites is the Dervish because it is a really fun concept, but y'all don't know about that. So I think the Falconer too is something that I want to play more to get a feel of it. It's a class that has like a raptor companion that not the kind from Jurassic Park. That can be used to attack targets, and they feel very ranger like. And there's some really cool stuff that they can do. It's just the animal companion. And oh, you know what? There's a class called a Deadeye as well. It was like kind of Wild West themes, but they're meant to be like bounty hunter esque, and that one sat aside as well because I felt like that was just like was a
gunslinger
little bit
kind of type.
yeah. And you can make them more of like a sniper, or you can make them more scrappy and gunslinger like. It was a really fun concept, and they can do just a bunch of fun stuff. But so maybe that one comes in too. That one's a little bit more. I feel like you could throw that anywhere in the setting, but at the same time, you have to make sure it's not too Wild West, or else it's just like, what is this game even? Yeah, the fun slinger for sure. Let's see, and the other one, I think it's super basic, but Berserker is really fun too because you can customize them in so many different ways. And one of their bread and butter is when somebody misses you with an attack, you can say, "No, you don't miss. You hit me, and you know what? I'm going to hit you back." That to me, that idea of tanking with your body is super fun, and you can customize them in a lot of different ways too. Like they can kind of almost be a healer if they. So then one of the signatures allows you to create these rune marks on the ground that if an ally stands in them.
Yeah, that made it fun to play, the runes and stuff.
Yeah, it's changed a little bit since you played it too.
Yeah.
To where now if allies stand in it, when you take damage, they get healing back. So there's some fun stuff to where you can kind of like you can place a rune mark down, and then your team will know to go stand in it if they want to get healing, which is kind of like you can almost kind of bully your table into standing in certain places to help protect them, to get them
But that's
like
like any aura. That's not bullying anything. That
yeah.
is a
It's
very
this is very
interesting
like it's micro
perspective
bullying.
to have on support.
Okay, okay, fine,
Who hurt you?
fine. It's right. Yeah. Ah, man. Let's see. Virtubike has bounty hunter type that singles out targets and gets possible buffs for defeating the target could be fun. So that was what the that was more or less what the Deadeye was, where they're really good at taking down single targets, and they would had an ability to where they couldn't miss so long as they channeled like they basically took aim at a target, and then they wouldn't be able to attack this turn. They'd be able to attack next turn, but it would always hit. So you can do stuff like that to guarantee that the target's going to go down. And then they had this fun thing called it was a glowing token, to where it's like a little tracking beacon essentially. So you can turn a small item like a bracelet or something into this token, and you can use your stealth to like in a non-combat space, just like slip it into the pocket of a mark that you're trying to track. And that sounded to me like some really cool narrative opportunities. And then they also had like a kind of a communication device because of just the nature of them being these bounty hunters. They would always have somebody back at home, wherever that is, that they could talk to. And like receive contracts from and go out and do things. So there was like a lot going on that would really want to refine before it becomes a real class, but there's just possibilities, so many possibilities.
Yeah, no, the more you talk about each of these, the more it really like it just keeps striking me that you're really encouraging. Well, it's the whole premise, but the story part of it, like, but doing more than just like, how quickly can we pound this enemy into submission and just take out max hit points every round. It's like, you get to play a little bit more. It becomes a little more about the strategy than an interaction with the environment and the different tools that
Right.
you have, rather than it just being. I don't know. I've been finding myself. I'm not. Maybe it's because of the gameplay, but with D&D, I've been finding myself kind of bored with the combat part, because it's just how hard can I hit, and then if I miss, I'm just frustrated that I didn't get to take points off the board. Like
Right.
so it doesn't. It's not fun. It's just rolling the dice to see whether or not I hit, and then when I don't, I'm disappointed. So it kind of, this adds a layer of interest.
So I've been thinking more often nowadays about what I actually like about, uh, I guess, tabletop role playing games that are kind of in the D&D space, so Distal included. And I think it's an expression of the character, maybe a little bit of an expression of yourself through the character potentially too, just because it feels good to do something clever. It feels good to do something that sets somebody else up for something, provided it actually feels good. Like, you can do something really mundane. And this is like, okay, whatever, and you're not really like celebrated for it. But I think creating like abilities that work really well with teammates and very intentionally say like, yeah, this is so like the rune mark on the ground for the berserker. This is the thing, you know, you can heal from it, and I'm going to go up front and take damage so that you get healing. Like that is an interaction between the people at your table, instead of, I hit it with my sword. I hit it with my sword. Okay, can you flank it? Yeah, flank it. Hit it with the sword together. That it's. I'm really thinking about the expression of your character through combat, because tactical. This game is very tactical, um, but if it's not interesting, then you're just going through the motions. And then the other part is expression of character through the actual virtues of the game outside of combat. So just all of the different mechanics and the background stuff and just the world, uh, all of that matters. But the reason that I key in on it is because I was wondering, like, why don't I care about travel? Why don't I care about uh, just the minutia of certain things? And it's what it comes down to is that in a just to use travel as an example, in that situation, you're kind of playing a game that doesn't really celebrate the character necessarily. Like you might have a ranger who can like roll checks to like see threats coming or maybe like help you move a little faster, but you're not actively like participating in the experience. There are ways that you can, like, you roll on a table while you're traveling and then some event appears and then you kind of interact with that. So like a traveling merchant or something and you talk to them and try to haggle them down. But the point being, it's like travel is almost like a subsystem that I felt like didn't need to be in the game because we could just say like, okay, it's going to take you a day to get here, and then you get there, and then we can save time to do all the fun stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So we did. Oh, go ahead.
Krupsoft saying it's not a game without an objective and a choice. Travel is just a thing that happens to you. Yeah. I feel very similarly. And the more that I kind of narrow in on that concept, I feel like the more that it has already been guiding a lot of the decisions that the Distal is making, figuring out what it cares about.
Cool. Yeah. So there was one other question that got asked just about the lineages or the races. So what's inspired the races, which you call lineages because that's the modern term for that you've created so far. So there's 9 of them. We've got the Atlian, which is like the water person, and the Aquaman person, dwarf, elf, fury, which is kind of a bird-ish person. They got feather. They have feathers. That's
Yes.
what makes the bird is feathers.
Yep.
The Kinsguard, which are like your humans. The Tangle folk, which they're like hobbits. It kind of seems like so they're like
right.
They're small and quick. And the Ulstdaughter, which are more like your Goliath half giant sort of character. A Wild Walker, that's an animal-like humanoid, and then Yvain, which are elemental human-esque type creatures. So what's been the inspiration for all of those lineages, or
so I
in general?
yeah, I think it's just a lot of. Okay, so first off, the names for a lot of them, I'm trying to hit every letter of the alphabet, or rather, at the very least, let's make sure that there are no duplicates of the letter. So A is for Atlian. Don't got a B yet, but yeah. So I'm okay. Listen.
So your goal is to have 26 lineages. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe. Then we have to start making things up. No. Okay, so it's not a goal. I shouldn't have led with that. But it's hilarious.
Xylophonian. Zoolander.
Listen, I got Y with the vein. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
No. There you go.
And you? That's a tough one.
Exactly. Okay, we need to stop thinking about this. It's fine. Everything's fine. We're gonna cut that out. We'll deal with it in post. So the particular lineages, it's definitely meant to be a mixture of the familiar. So elves and dwarves are like what you would expect from Tolkien, Gygaxian sort of elves and dwarves. There aren't too many surprises in that realm. And then I think for some of the more esoteric, is that the correct word? Options like esoteric, the Atlian, the Fury, even like the take on, well, I guess Yvain, just as an example, those are probably just like parts of mythology that I tend to key in on. Like I really like the idea of harpies. I really like the idea of sirens, and the mythos that kind of belongs to that. And because of that, there are some things that they share between them. I think when you think about the world and how it originates, I guess in a lot of cultures, needs to be something in reference to the Ulstdaughter. There needs to be something kind of primordial and just ancient, time before time. And that's what the Ulstadr are, these like Titanborn, essentially. And uh, and they all, as an entire culture, have a really bad case of amnesia, where they don't remember the last, I think, or 200 years ago. They all collectively lost their memory. So uh, a lot of their culture is like figuring out who they were, to the point where like it's built into traditions and that sort of thing. They create like memory stones because they're also very stoic a lot of times too, just innately. So they have like stone carvings of gods that remind them of emotions, and it's just, it allows you to create some really cool aspects of the culture. That's all in the packet, by the way. If you go down all the way to the bottom, you can start digging through some of the one page of lore for each lineage. And then when it came to like you needed a small race. People really like halflings. They really like gnomes. They really like hobbits. They really like things like that. And Tangle Folk was kind of my answer, where they embody some of those traits, or some of the like familiar elements, but also they're wicked fast, which because they used to be called they used to be called brownies way back, which I don't think you could say anymore. Yes, it's not great. But that was like, when you think of a brownie, there's mythos that in Celtic, I believe Celtic mythology, and it kind of evolves around the gnomes and elves and that sort of thing.
Wow,
And
is that where the Girl Scout things? I was a brownie a million years ago.
maybe, yeah, no
Maybe.
idea.
Huh.
And then they were also at one point called Quickling, but that's like a
A
D&D
little
thing.
on
I'm
the
pretty sure
nose.
it's copywriting. Well, yeah, I mean, I would
I
have
like
been fine
Tangle
with it.
Folk. It's
Yeah,
fun.
Tanglefolk is good. Uh,
Oh, but
and they're
Quickling would have
from,
got your Q. So there
yeah,
is that.
yeah.
You'll
We'll have
have
to
to
think
come
of
up with
another
another
option.
Q. Vertubach, whose question this was, by the way, I didn't mention that when I asked it, but said that we're going to hold you to the 26 alphabet
Well, there's a lot of room to
lineages
grow.
here.
Yeah, and then we'll need to just invent new letters. That'd be fine. Cool.
Yeah, and then Henry's headcanon is that the Ulstadrs have just been drunk for the last 1,000 years. That's why they can't remember anything.
Which can neither confirm nor deny. Oh my goodness. Okay, so why don't we take a quick look at the new digest?
Yeah.
Because that's
I
a
love
thing
this
that,
idea because this is a way to keep interacting so it doesn't stop with just the books. There's this few spare letters. There you go.
right?
Yeah, so there's ways to continue to engage and share and expand the lore and everything through these monthly digests.
Let me bring that onto the screen and see if I'm gonna remove us. There we go. So the Distal monthly digest is, this will be the second one. The first one you can get uh, on BackerKit right now. It's free. There's a post, and actually I think I'm going to refactor it and use a new layout, as this one does currently. So the display is not going to be, might not be too great here. Let me see if I can. Is that okay? Nope, that looks like balls. I'm going to go back to the one page. Okay. So the Distal Monthly Digest is intended to inspire creativity. It's intended to give you more tools for the toolbox and some experimental rules and mechanics and such to play with, as well as like give you lore drops and that sort of thing. So in this month's digest, which will be free, I'll drop a link to it after this, is that you'll find, just articles on stuff and things. So, but the layout has totally changed. It's much more modern. There's some math stuff in here for the nerds like myself, that kind of breaks down different hit percentages and what being untrained in something does. There's just some, I don't know words, but anyway, you might dig it. So it's only a handful of different pages long. It's intended to be a very lightweight supplement. And this month we have an article that's written by John from Dragon Mind, which we both know as well. So that's pretty much it. That's the entire supplement. This happens every month. I think after I'm done with juggling the campaign and building out the new alpha packet and that sort of thing, these will probably end up getting longer at the same time. But yeah, so hopefully you dig it. I will drop a link to it after our stream, in which I believe we're almost wrapped.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think there's some cool things that we can look at next time too, just to tease it. So we're going to talk about the role of consequence in Distal. And since you're working on the character sheet too, I thought, I'm putting you on the spot here, but I thought it might be fun to look at the evolution of that. Because I have all my old sheets, and we can maybe next time, to encourage people to come back, we can sneak preview. Because I personally think I've given you my thoughts on character sheets, and it's how you organize the information really helps, like we talked about in the beginning of this stream, to bring it full circle. The formatting matters. It creates clarity, ease of use, and lets you stay immersed in the game rather than hunting around on your paper for some random number. So I think you've put a lot of thought into the design that has elevated the game. So that can be a teaser for next time.
Word. Before we sign off, I want to quickly touch on Navi's questions here, just to pull it out. Let's see. Somewhat contradictory opinion. I appreciate lineage-based differences, stats abilities, but the inclusion of the negative stats as present on 4 to 9 feels like it narrows
approximately not 4 of the 9.
Oh,
so 4. You think
gotcha.
like 4 of them take a negative, but is it balanced out by a higher positive on the other side?
Yeah. So not stat wise, but they're balanced around the traits that they have within the individual lineages. So the different abilities and also their hit die. So for example, Ulsdaughter have a D12 hit die, which is a lot. It's just a lot of health. Dwarves also have a lot of health, and because of that, their traits are a little bit more reeled in compared to some of the crazier ones from other lineages. For example, Tanglefolk regenerate 1 health every single round, which it means that they never need healing outside of combat because they're just going to be able to do that by themselves. It also means that so we penalize that in other ways where we reduce their health die to a D6. So it kind of forces you to play in a certain way. So there's a lot of consideration in that respect, and that doesn't mean that there's not room for things to be adjusted, because I understand where you're coming from, and I'm definitely the fan of, I like negative values so long as it's not crippling, so long as it adds choices to be made to or rather, I would say decisions to like work around, or maybe even flavor to work around. And I don't know that I'm doing that in every place, but that is at least the intent behind some of these changes, or some of the lineage stats.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if this is like necessary, but just as you're talking, it could be interesting. So we're talking a lot about consequence. I wonder if there's a place in the description of the lineages to kind of make that trade-off overt, where it's like you're slower, but you have this advantage, or you're humans. I'm not sure with the Kinsguard, but I know in D&D humans tend to be more like level. They're kind of just generically good at everything. So
Right.
it's like you kind of looking at those trade-offs, because again, that's a key feature of this, is you're playing a game of consequence and trade-offs. rather
Right.
than just trying to min-max your way through it. So maybe there's a place for making that a little bit more obvious, like you get a -1 here because you get this. So that kind of
Yeah.
prevents people from falling into that space that Novatech is talking about, where it's just like, oh, I don't want a negative on my stat sheet, because I totally get that.
Right. Yeah, I wonder if there's room for that. I think one of the ways that you could address it is by allowing people to create lineage options and then just doing like a sort of point buy, so that not for the actual lineage creation itself, but so that people can see like what the costs, like the relative costs of different features are, and then that might kind of uh, illuminate some of the design choices. But
Yeah, and it may even be a line in the description that just says
yeah,
super fast but not so strong,
oh my
like,
gosh,
more elegant than that, but basically like it may not even take that many words
yeah,
to kind of make that trade-off. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so it's something to think about. I appreciate the feedback in that regard, and totally get it. Like Steph is saying, seeing a negative on your paper, like you want to know why at the very least. Uh, but cool. So thank you all for hanging out. Uh, we're a little over an hour now. There's 2 weeks left in the campaign. So if you can,
Tell your
pledge.
friends.
Tell your friends too. Also pledge, please. And even just interacting on the backer kit page, so like thumbing up stuff and then replying to other people's comments and commenting yourself is always helpful. We are we're a pretty engaged uh, community when it comes to the other projects. Like it's a whole like row that mentions how engaged the community is, and we're doing a pretty good job. So thank you all. But we'll keep it going. Stream next week. Same bat time, same bat plays.
Yeah, and definitely post uh post questions if there's stuff that you want to know about, if there's, whether it's in the weeds or just generic, because that'll give us stuff that we can talk about and share with you guys.
For sure. All right. Thanks everybody. Catch you later.
Bye.